Good morning. Today we're going to continue our study of Solomon, and this passage we're going to read right now may have happened before or after Solomon has been anointed king in Gihon. So today's reading is from 1 Chronicles 22, 5 through 19. So it's 1 Chronicles 22, 5 through 19. Pause me, read that, and I'll be here when you get back. So, verse 5, David is talking. We don't know who he's talking to, and he says, you know what, Solomon's young and inexperienced, so I'm going to do the legwork here. I'm going to get this thing rolling, and what we're talking about is building the temple. I'm going to get everything under control. I wanted to build the temple. God told me not to, so I'm just going to get everything ready for Solomon. In verses 6 through 8, David starts talking to Solomon. He calls Solomon in, and he says, you know what, you got to build this house. You got to build this temple for the Lord. This is something I wanted to do. I had it in my heart. And it should be noted here that the commentaries pretty much agree that this is not something God told David to do. This is just something that David wanted to do for God. Now, critics will say, so the temple is not really an important place or building. Others will say that because David was a man after God's own heart, it is. I'll leave it up to you to decide and study that question. But the Lord did come to David in verse 8 and say, you've shed much blood, so you can't build this house. And the blood here is maybe the blood that David has shed in war, maybe the blood of Uriah. It could be anything. It's not really explained. But God wanted this house to be built by a man of peace. So if you'll look in verse 9, and it says, but you'll have a son who will be a man of peace and rest, and I will give him rest from all his enemies on every side, and his name will be Solomon, and I will grant Israel peace during his reign. And then verse 10 goes on to say, I will establish his kingdom of Israel forever. Lots of discussion here. So Solomon's name, God said that Solomon's name would be Jedediah, not Solomon. Bathsheba named Solomon Solomon. So this name here in verse 9 where it says Solomon could be a translation error that means peace, because God would have used Jedediah instead of Solomon as the name here. And in the original language, the name Solomon is spelled like half a letter off from the word peace. So again, what the critics are saying is that it was not Solomon who God wanted to build the temple and establish the throne, but Jesus, the man of peace. So again, if you want to do some research, very interesting. I've been reading about it. It's a very interesting study, but it's pretty detailed and, to be honest, quite confusing. So verse 11 through 13, David is continuing to talk to Solomon, and he says, you know, I hope that God gives you discretion and understanding. And the reason I hope he does that is so that you will keep the law. If you have discretion and understanding, you will keep the law. That's your job, to keep the law. Then you'll have success. So it's not that once you have success, you'll have discretion and understanding. It's God will give you discretion, or I'm praying that God will give you discretion and understanding so that you can keep the law. Then you'll have success. And then he just kind of gives the fatherly admonition, be strong and courageous. That's something we all teach our kids. The verses 14 through 16, David talks again about what David's done. He's collected all this money and this wood and the stone. The money comes to about 18 million in today's money, and really the commentaries I read are probably anywhere from 20 to maybe even 40 years old. So 18 million in 20-year-old money, no telling what that is today, but a lot of money. He had lots of money, and he set that aside, his money and the treasury money, to build the temple. And then in verses 17 through 19, David orders the leaders to help Solomon. Again, we don't know exactly how old Solomon was. There's a period between the time that Solomon was anointed in Gihon and David's death. Some say it's up to 4 years, where they were kind of co-regents, if you will, and this may have been during that period. May have been when Solomon was as young as 10. I mean, it really doesn't say when this was, but it says to build the temple. This is his instructions for building the temple. So we will move on tomorrow from here. I think the lesson today is there's a lot of questions regarding this temple, and I don't know that there is any right or wrong answer to it. If you're really interested in learning more about the temple, I encourage you to do some research on it. It's fascinating stuff. But this is the start of the temple, which is now the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, where there's so much controversy. So this is one of the places it starts. See you tomorrow.